Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and my co-host Moon. It is Thursday. It is time for us to discuss one of the many denizens of the worlds of darkness. And that being a thing, we cannot neglect to discuss probably one of the most hated portions of the Vampire the Masquerade mythos, and that is Clan Tremere, or House Tremere. So settle in, get comfortable, and pour yourself a glass of something red, and we're going to discuss the Warlocks. Now, Clan Tremere has been one of the most affected clans when it comes to 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade. And when I say that, I mean that they have become, in-game, the most royally screwed, and out of character, probably the clan that gains the most out of this. And I say that in playability. Clan Tremere has gone from being one of the hardest clans to truly portray, in my opinion. And I've played a few Tremere myself, both of the Camarilla and Anti-Tribute Persuasion. I have story told for Tremere many times. I've run a pure Tremere game at one point in time, which was a lot of fun, and would be definitely a story for another night. I have become lucky, as of recent, as a storyteller. He is not climbing inside of my hair, he is on top of my headrest. I've become lucky as of late as an ST due to the fact that I have a player who is so involved in the intricacies, the inner workings of Clan Tremere, to the point where he is the perfect person to run as a regent for the clan. And although he is not truly a partner as a storyteller, he does end up being the clan narrator for Clan Tremere. And that is probably one of the best ways to truly run Clan Tremere, is to have a separate storyteller specifically for that faction. And I say that because they need so much as a clan. Now, you can do what most storytellers do and just let them do their thing. Let your characters buy thaumaturgy as they see fit, and hope no one complains too much. But in all realism, playing a Tremere back before 5th edition should have been one of the most horrific clans to play, because they're so cornered, I guess would be the best way to put it. They have the most, sorry, I didn't mean to cover your beautiful face. They have the most regulations and rules. They are the most run by their clan. And what I mean by that is that the pyramid structure of Clan Tremere demands such important, intricate rules if it's going to properly work right. There are so many layers of the clan, from apprentice up to Tremere himself, that portraying them properly and making them run the way that the World of Darkness intended them to run is nigh impossible without a good, solid collection of players, unless you're running a pure Tremere game, which not many people have ever done. At least, not many people have done that I've met. I should say that. Now, when you're looking at Clan Tremere, one of the things that I love about them is that since the V5 reconstruction of the World of Darkness. Since the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition has come out and skewed the clan so much, so many things have changed that although in a story sense and on an individual basis for the clan themselves, they sound horrific for the most part, out of character, they've opened up such a freeing sense of ability. A freeing sense of ability to achieve your own personal goals. Now, Tremere, they've always been heavy on letting their apprentices and their members, their clan members, achieve their own personal goals as long as they are in line with the goal of the clan as a whole. But now with Vienna being toppled the way that it has, and having the Second Inquisition coming in and completely destroying everything that they had built up in Vienna, is just it just opens up. It opens up so much. And again, I know players who are both elated out of character to have that freedom to play a Tremere that's not under the boot of the council. And then I also know those players who think, well, this just ruins the clan. This makes it so that you can't play Tremere the way that they were meant to be played. And they're absolutely right, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because of all of the work that went into playing a Tremere when you did play it the way that they intended. Now that that's out of the way, you can actually focus on your own character's arc. That you can focus on your own character growth. What are your characters' goals and dreams? And I think it was more fun playing the Rogue Tremere than it was playing the Pyramid Tremere. And now, most Tremere are the Rogue Tremere. Even the ones within the Camarilla. Especially since the Tremere now have new political adversaries in the Banu Haquim, and possibly in the Tzimisce. Now, if we look at what they have done, one of the major things that happened after the bombing of the Vienna Chantry by the Second Inquisition was the fact that the stranglehold that the clan in general kept over their younger members was the fact that all members of Clan Tremere were one step bloodbound to the council, to clan itself. In the games that I have played, that very rarely, if ever, came up. In the games that I've run, I went out of my way to make sure that my Tremere that I had jurisdiction over, the Tremere that I had jurisdiction over, were constantly being forced to do things by their elders so that they wouldn't fully be happy. I was trying to make it so that they felt that ever-pressing boot. I had one Tremere player who was charged with finding all of the elemental styles of thaumaturgy. Basically, he could learn what he wanted to, but he was expected to learn Neptune's Might and the Green Path and Lure of Flames, and basically he was being forced to learn as much as he could about, and I never told him the reason behind this, but I was forming him into a weapon against Tzimisce Khalduns. I wanted him to be available just in case I, as an ST, chose to attack the city with a sorcerer. So that was my whole thing behind that. I had another one who was, again, allowed to follow his own pursuits, but he was in he was directed to try to gain as much knowledge, if not the actual powers of necromancy, as much as possible, because they wanted to try to find a way to make that common within Clan Tremere. But the whole point is that their clan flaw, their clan weakness originally was the fact that if they did not do what was ordered to them by their clan, they would be punished severely. If they tried to break away and do their own thing away from the clan, they could possibly be executed. But from my personal time as a player, even a player who played Clan Tremere, that rarely ever came up. Clan Tremere was the clan that you took in the games where I'm from if you didn't want a weakness. Hell, I remember the best way to take get a few extra points on your character sheet when you got your flaws was to take Bound to your clan if you were playing like Giovanni or something like that, because it just ended up running into the Tremere and nothing ever happened. It basically ran as you would the Tremere, where nothing ever came of it. So that whole Bound embraced with the cup thing was bullshit, in my opinion. And as an ST, again, I did try to make it something. I was also very strict on thaumaturgy, where you had to learn Path of Blood before you could learn anything else, which most storytellers, to my experience, never did that. You basically could come in whatever the hell you wanted to. Nobody cared. Now, in V5, their Bane has been switched. Clan Bane. Once the clan was defined by a rigid hierarchy of blood bonds reaching from the top to the bottom of the pyramid. But after the fall of Vienna, their blood has recoiled and absorbed all such connections. Tremere Vitae can no longer blood bond other kindred, and though they themselves can be bound by kindred from other clans, a Tremere can still bind mortals and ghouls, though the corrupted Vitae must be drunk an additional number of times equal to the vampire's Bane severity for the bond to form. Some theorize this change is the revenge of the antediluvian devoured by Tremere. Others attribute it to simple mutation. Regardless, the clan studies their Vitae intently to discover if the process can be reversed, and indeed determine if they would want to do so. They now, the stronger their potency gets, have weaker blood when it comes to bonding. That is a weakness. That's something that can be exploited. It's harder for them to make ghouls. It is easier for them to be trusted, strangely enough. However, nobody's truly gonna... That should not be widespread information. But I'm a fan. I like that. I like the fact that the Tremere now actually seem to have a weakness, and it's a weakness that truly weakens them. It makes it difficult to blood bond. It makes it easy for them to become bloodbound. And it makes it safer for a lot of kindred to do the work that they need to do. So, I'm happy with the new weakness. Now, on top of weakness, we have to also brush on compulsion. And that's because on top of every weakness, on top of every bane, there comes the shining essence of the clan founder, the source of the blood, forcing itself through and causing its childer and its grandchilder and its great-grandchilder to act the way that the founder would. Notice I'm not using the word antediluvian because they technically don't have one. Third generation does not make an antediluvian. Being around before the flood makes an antediluvian. That's what the word antediluvian means. It means pre-flood. The founder of Clan Tremere is not that old. In fact, they are one of the youngest clans in existence. Now, Tremere suffered from a derangement of perfectionism, and that carries on down in the compulsion of his clan, where nothing but the best satisfies the vampire. Anything less than exceptional performance instills a profound sense of failure, and they often repeat tasks obsessively to get them just right. Until the vampire scores a critical win on a skill roll, or the scene ends, the vampire labors under a 2 dice penalty to all dice pools. Reduce the penalty to 1 die for repeated action, and remove it entirely on the second repeat. How frustrating is that? You've succeeded! Be happy! I didn't succeed well enough. Look at the rigidity of Clan Tremere. And the need to not only have 7 layers of the clan, but to have circles of power within those 7 layers of the clan. Perfection is key to Clan Tremere. And the fact that it is now played out in their compulsion, something that shouldn't come up often, but when it does, it's frustrating as all hell. Not only to the Tremere, but to those of their coterie. Then we've got something great going on here. Now, usually around this point in time, I would read a Discipline. And most individuals who are listening to this video are probably thinking, oh, he's going to go over Thaumaturgy at this point. Or we're expecting that, but I'm not going to. Because V5 Blood Sorcery does not belong to Clan Tremere. In my opinion, that is a Banu Haquim power. The idea that Blood Sorcery is the path of blood, or can be Thaumaturgy itself, is completely ridiculous to me. I believe that Blood Sorcery is in fact Quietus, and is the sole power of the Banu Haquim. It is a way that they have found to mutate the blood, to create that. And given the fact that the Tremere have suffered such a grand loss, and if you've watched my What the Fuck Happened to Thaumaturgy video for my first Metaplot Monday, you'll understand what I'm talking about, where they lost their paths. I'm going to try not to repeat much information, but I'm sure there's going to be some overlap when it comes to these 2 videos. But Thaumaturgy is gone, in my opinion, and they have what they started out with, which is the stolen power from the Banu Haquim. Now, the discipline I am going to go over is Auspex, and I'm going over it with that because I've already discussed Clan Malkavian, and I discussed Demontation and the difference between Demontation and Auspex, or Demontation and Dominate. And when I go over the Toreador, of course I'm going to discuss Presence. But Auspex, I believe they got from their, and this hurts me to say, Tzimisce. The Tzimisce blood that they chose to take. The Salubri blood that they chose to take. Those 2 clans would definitely inspire Auspex to blossom within the clan. Now, I understand that Tzimisce don't technically practice Auspex anymore, but I do believe that the predator type that they were able to grab of Clan Tzimisce were more of the old clan variety. And the old clan variety of Clan Tzimisce would not be caught dead practicing vicissitude. And I do believe that the Protean disciplines would have been completely cast aside if you're looking at the lunatic faction of old Clan Tzimisce, or the Tzimisce who just do not want to have anything involved with them. Now, I do enjoy the idea of the Carpathian Tzimisce who still do practice standard Protean. But Old Clan Tzimisce would be practicing Auspex, due to the fact that they would all share a common predator type. Now, Auspex, in this aspect, can be looked at with the wonderful, wonderful ways of putting these things. This is the characteristics of Auspex. The storyteller may wish to make Auspex rolls for characters in order for more convincing, provide wrong and incomplete answers after failed rolls. It is a mental type discipline. The masquerade threat is low. Auspex never by itself manifests its way visible to the naked eye, or causes effects that can be rationalized, if only as dumb luck. Blood resonance, phlegmatic. Artists, especially photographers and visionaries, certain schizophrenics, users of psychedelics or psychoactive substances, detectives. That's a very broad range of individuals you can feed from. It's also very interesting, the idea to think of individuals of Clan Tremere feeding from artists, visionaries, certain schizophrenics. But I can understand the idea of psychoactive substances being a selective individual that you would feed off of as Clan Tremere. Many hermetic orders have been known to use psychedelic substances to help them in their practices, so that does fully make sense. Now, level 1 Auspex, you have heightened senses. The vampire's senses sharpen to a preternatural degree, giving them the ability to see in pitch darkness, hearing ultrasonic frequencies, and smell the fear of cowering prey. The cost is free, but see below, as it says. Dice pool, wits plus resolve. The system, the user adds their Auspex rating to all perception rolls. So that'd be the, but see below, is that you're adding your Auspex to your perception. I'm actually surprised that more disciplines don't do this. If exposed to extreme sensations such as loud bangs, flashes of intense light, or overpowering smells while the power is active, the user must succeed in a wits plus resolve difficulty of 3 or more. Roll to dampen their senses in time, or the overload causes them to sustain a -3 dice penalty to all perception-based rolls for the rest of the scene. That's actually kind of nice, because I remember doing that to individuals. I'll have bright lights come on or something like that, and I've never given them tests. I guess I'll start doing that. Duration until deactivated. Having this power active for longer stretches of time without rest, more than a scene especially. So for high stimulus environments, might necessitate spending willpower at the storyteller's discretion. Okay. It's a good idea to turn it off because it's straining. I can understand the idea of individuals like Clan Toreador members going outside and sitting in the rain with heightened senses of feeling on just so they can enjoy the sensations. What are you doing? Moon. Hi. You're a butt. Sense the unseen, also a level 1. The senses of a vampire become attuned to dimensions beyond the mundane, allowing them to sense presences otherwise hidden from the naked eye. This can be anything from another vampire using Obfuscate to someone using Auspex to spy upon the character, to a ghost in the middle of the room. Dormant blood sorcery spells and rituals might also be found with this power at storyteller discretion. The cost is free. Dice pool is wits plus Auspex or resolve plus Auspex. System. Whenever there's something supernatural hiding in plain sight, the storyteller makes a hidden... Excuse me. The storyteller makes a hidden roll of wits plus Auspex against the difficulty they choose. Against an entity actively trying to stay hidden, the storyteller can call for a blind roll. Lisa, roll 7 dice for me, an example. As a contest against the target's relevant pool. For example, detecting a vampire using Obfuscate would be a roll of wits plus Auspex versus wits plus Obfuscate. If the vampire actively searches for a hidden supernatural entity, they roll Resolve plus Auspex similarly. Duration, passive. It's on. It's just on. That's actually really neat, and I like to point that out, that it's neat not for Auspex, but it's neat for Obfuscate. This actually gives you a reason, as an Nosferatu or a Banu Haquim, or anybody else with Obfuscate, to actually try to stay hidden when using Obfuscate. The idea that you can just stand in the middle of the room and not be noticed is great, but those people with higher perceptions, like vampires, might take a little bit more to use, might take a little bit more trying to actually accomplish it. Level 2, Premonition. The vampire experiences flashes of insight. These may take the form of raised hackles, sudden inspiration, or vivid visions. While never too precise, these visions can nudge the vampire out of harm's way or reveal the truth previously overlooked. Cost is free or 1 rouse check. Free or 1 rouse check. I guess if you're trying to force yourself into a premonition. Dice pool. Resolve plus Auspex. System. Whenever the storyteller deems it appropriate, this power gives the character a sudden hint that aids them in some way, letting them find a clue they've missed or saving them from danger. Whether it gives the character a sudden vision of themselves walking into a trap, an inviting red glow over the second right turn during a chase, or a brief flash of a skeleton beneath the floorboards in the prince's office. This power always gives the storyteller license to subtly speed up play or move the story into a desired track. The suggested limit is one's premonition per scene. Oh, okay. The suggested limit is 1 premonition per scene, even if more than one character has premonition. The user can also actively provoke a premonition by focusing on a subject, making a rouse check, and rolling Resolve plus Auspex. The number of successes rolled determines the level of insight on the subject, if any. Duration passive. I like that as a nice storyteller tool. I hate the fact that I have 0 individuals with Auspex in my game at the moment. I'm running a very small game right now that has just a few players, and we do not have anybody with Auspex. And that stinks, because being able to speed up the story by giving a little bit of plot point is a nice little additive. Also level 2, Scry the Soul. By focusing on a person, the vampire can perceive the state of that person's psyche as a shifting aura of colors. Auras reveal little precise information, but do provide clues regarding many subjects. Emotional state, resonance, and supernatural traits. If looking for a specific condition, the vampire can cursorily scan the crowd and detect it. Such cursory scans provide no further information. I like that because I remember playing in the old LARP game where you couldn't just scan with aura perception. Aura perception was one target at a time kind of situation, and it is nice to be able to go, that's a vampire, that's a werewolf, I don't know what the hell that thing is. Cost is 1 rouse check. The dice pool is intelligence plus auspex versus composure plus subterfuge. System: make an intelligence auspex versus composures plus subterfuge roll. On a win, the storyteller truthfully answers a number of questions equal to the margin of the roll about the target's aura and psyche, including... I like that. I like the idea of, okay, well, the difference between your win and their loss was 5 points, therefore you get 5 questions answered, instead of having to do it over and over and over again. That is nice. The emotional state of a subject, the resonance of the subject's blood, whether the subject is a vampire, werewolf, ghoul, or any other supernatural being, whether the subject is under the influence of blood sorcery or other magic, whether the subject has, whether the subject has committed diablerie in the last year. A critical win allows discovery of something unexpected, as determined by the storyteller. That's nice. If scanning a crowd, roll versus the difficulty determined by the size of the crowd, and external distractions as well as the type of trait being sought. Finding a vampire in the living room might only be a difficulty of 3, while finding the most nervous person in a crowded rave is most likely difficulty of 6 or higher. 1 turn, storyteller's discretion for duration. Those are very nice updates to classic gifts. Share the senses. By reaching out with their mind, the vampire can tap into the senses of another mortal or vampire, seeing, hearing, and feeling what they do. The user still retains their own perceptions and is still aware of their own surroundings. Though the effect requires some getting used to, the user decides whether to tap into one. Whether to tap into only one, some, or all of the target senses. When used on a stranger, this power requires line of sight to initiate. However, it can be used over long distances on someone who still has some of the user's blood in their body. That's very interesting. I can see Toreador using that to piggyback on sexual experiences. Cost 1 rouse check. Dice pool, resolve plus auspex. System, roll, resolve plus auspex at difficulty of 3. This difficulty can go up depending on the distraction, distance, and other factors, such as the amount of the user's blood that remains in the target. The target usually remains unaware of the intrusion, but Sense the Unseen can allow the passenger to be noticed. To get rid of an unwanted rider, the victim must beat the intruder at a Wits plus Resolve versus Wits plus Resolve roll. An Auspex user thrown out this way cannot make another sharing attempt until the next night. Duration, 1 scene. Excuse me. Reading takes it out of me, apparently. Level 4, Spirit's Touch. Spirit's Touch is a classic, so let's see what they've done a little bit differently with this one. By touching an inanimate object or the ground at a location, the vampire can sense the emotional residue left behind by those who have handled that object or visited the location in the past. The user gains insight into Not only the person, but also what was done and under what circumstances. While rarely crystal clear, the information often provides leads impossible to gain from regular forensics or deduction. That's nice. It actually doesn't, it's not that different from the old one, but it is worded a lot better. Cost 1 rouse check, dice pool, intelligence plus Auspex. System. Make an intelligence plus Auspex roll versus a difficulty depending on the information sought. Gleaning the emotional state of the user of a murder weapon used a few days before is a difficulty of 3, but sensing the surroundings in which a 300-year-old letter was written approaches difficulty of 6 or higher. Each point of margin on a roll allows the user to sense roughly 1 additional previous handler and set of circumstances counting backwards from the most recent. Duration 1 turn. That is all we have on that one. So that's actually, it's pretty good. It causes the storyteller to actually have to have a little bit of thought on items and locations. So I find that nice. So do some planning, STs. Level 5, Clairvoyance. Oh, there's only 1 level 4. That's interesting. Level 5, Clairvoyance. By closing their eyes and entering a light trance, the vampire becomes master of its surroundings. It's just worded really nice, isn't it? In a few minutes, it can gather information from roughly a city block size area, more if outdoors and less if populated. What would normally take many hours, perhaps days of legwork and investigation, once connected in such a way to their surroundings, the vampire can also receive information on anything happening out of the ordinary in the area. Nice. Cost 1 rouse strike. That's a level 5. That is a level 5. And it's 1 rouse check. That's nice. Dice pool, intelligence plus Auspex. System. Roll intelligence plus Auspex against the difficulty based on the security and level of the activity of the area. Using clairvoyance on one's own mansion would be a difficulty of 3, while an unfamiliar city block in the slums of a major city would amount to 7 or more. The user adds their base haven rating in dice to the pool when using clairvoyance on their own haven. That's neat. You know the place well enough. You know what's there. You have active experience in that house. So if you're in your own haven, you add your haven points to it. That's very cool. The storyteller answers the vampire's questions about the coming and going in the area, what people have seen and heard, topics of local gossip, recent major shocks or impressions, and so forth. The player can ask roughly 1 question per point of margin. Answers about deliberately concealed information might consume more than 1 point. A critical win reveals something major, regardless of the question asked, assuming there is something to reveal. The vampire can also clairvoyantly monitor events in progress, though this requires them to remain in the area for as long as the effect is active. Duration, a few minutes for information gathering, up to a night for vigilance. That's pretty nice. It's not exactly what the word clairvoyant means, but it is actually a very nice use of that gift. So, no complaints here. Possession. Possession's an Auspex gift now. That's very interesting. Possession used to be a 5th level of Dominate, and now it's sitting in Auspex, except it is an amalgam of Dominate 3, so you have to have at least a 3rd level of Dominate to do this. So possession seems to be more on the Malkavian front than anything else. But I guess the Tremere also have dominate too, so there you go. For full circle, back to the wizards. Possession, Amalgam, Dominate 3. With this power, the vampire can strip the will of a mortal and completely possess their body, using it as their own. While the mind of the subject remains hidden to the vampire, they can do anything and go anywhere the subject could while the power remains active. Using this, a vampire can even experience the sunlight, food, and physical sexuality long denied them. Their host paying the price for whatever abuse the vampire wreaks on their body while riding it. Cost: 2 rouse checks, dice pool, resolve plus Auspex versus resolve plus intelligence. This power can only be used on mortals. If a mortal is a ghoul, they must first be bloodbound to the user. Okay, so you can only use it on your own ghouls. That's pretty interesting. Before possession can begin, well, I guess you could grab somebody else's ghoul and shove your blood down their throat and then do it, so I guess that's not exactly true. If a mortal is a ghoul, they must first be bloodbound before the user. Before possession can begin, the vampire must have eye contact with their victim. See Dominate. Understood. The user then engages in a resolve plus Auspex versus a resolve plus intelligence conflict with the victim in order to inhabit their body. If the vampire's player rolls as a total failure, the victim becomes immune to further possession attempts for the duration of the story. Storyteller note, I always say story is a month because my LARP games typically go years. Once the vampire inhibits the body of the victim, their own body falls into torpor-like trance, completely unaware of their surroundings and their own physical state, except for aggravated damage, which breaks the trance and ends the effect. A vampire possessing a mortal can use Auspex, Presence, and Dominate through them. If the user wishes to extend possession into daytime, they must make a roll to stay awake. Failure to stay awake ends the power. Any aggravated damage to the subject also risks ending the possession. The user must succeed in a Resolve plus Auspex roll. Difficulty 2, plus damage taken. Can understand that. To stay in control, if the subject dies during possession, the resulting spiritual trauma immediately causes the user to sustain 3 levels of aggravated damage to willpower. This power does not give the user the ability to read the mind, use the skills, or emulate the manners of the victim. Any skills employed use the possessing vampires rating. The user must make a manipulation plus performance versus wits plus insight roll to successfully impersonate the victim's manners, expressions, and the like. Finally, possession violates the victim's even more profoundly than a blood bond. The storyteller should consider awarding stains for this action. I agree. Duration until ended, voluntarily or involuntarily. And now the last level, which is also a level 5, is telepathy. At the highest level of Auspex, the vampire can now literally read minds, as well as project their own thoughts into the minds of others. While reading a mortal's mind is relatively straightforward, undead minds require a higher effort to penetrate. Cost 1 rouse check, plus 1 willpower versus a non-consenting vampire. Okay, so if you're trying to do it against another vampire who's not willing, costs a willpower to do it. Makes a lot of sense. The user is not required to roll any dice to project their thoughts to another vampire or mortal, though they do require line of sight. To read the minds of a mortal within line of sight, the roll Resolve plus Auspex versus Wit plus Subterfuge while looking into the eyes, unless the mortal consents, in which there is no roll is required. A win means that the user can discern surface thoughts as a stream of images, with higher margin allowing the user to probe for more distant and varied memories. A critical win gives the coherent picture of the subject's current thoughts and intentions. To read the mind of a non-consenting vampire, spend 1 willpower point before rolling. Duration, roughly 1 minute per rouse check, increase to full scene on a consenting subject. That's actually pretty damn cool. Now, I said earlier, now that we're done with disciplines and all that, I said earlier that although in character, I can understand why there is a issue with the way that the Tremere are done. But out of character, and I have to say, even to an extent still in character, the level of capabilities your Tremere have been opened beyond measure. You need to understand that they're Camarilla, but House Goretrix is active. The Anarch Tremere is active now. You can do what you want. You can try to achieve what you want. And there's not going to be much left when it comes to the way that the Tremere are controlled. There are those Tremere who are still incredibly dedicated to the way the pyramid wanted to be run. Hell, there's a pyramid lore sheet. But House Karna is amazing. It's a Tremere loyal group, or it's a Camarilla loyal group of Tremere that are not bound to the rigid hierarchy. Then there's also the idea of the Tremere are no longer the only sorcerers in the Camarilla. They're also not the only advisors in the Camarilla. The Assamites, the Banu Haquim, now have more power. And it needs to be in consideration of where does the Camarilla want to go on that? Where exactly does the Camarilla want to go on that front? Do they want to continue utilizing the Tremere and all the years of deceit? Or is your city going to trust the Banu Haquim? Is your city going to decide that now that the Sabbat's gone, it's a good idea to give the Tzimisce a try? Because I do know that all those predator types that say that only the Tremere get extra levels of blood sorcery or thaumaturgy or whatever you want to call it, I am going to allow, as a storyteller, anybody who plays Tzimisce or Banu Haquim to take those predator types and also gain those extra points when it comes to blood sorcery. I will allow a Tzimisce to take blood sorcery as either a 3rd discipline or a 4th discipline. It'll be their choices. What are you going to do with Clan Tremere? Are they going to suffer and flounder out of everything that they've lost? Or are they going to start scraping and trying to survive? I already discussed in the What the Fuck Happened to Thaumaturgy video that my Tremere, in my games, are going to start infiltrating the cults. They're going to start trying to infiltrate the Hakata. They're going to start infiltrating the Bahari, and whatever cult has their own type of magic to perform rituals and ceremonies. They're going to try to rebuild the power that they had. Because right now, Path of Blood is all they have. And it's not even true Path of Blood. It's Quietus. Well, I guess that's really all I have to say about Clan Tremere at the moment. I'm sure as time goes by, there might be more information that I'm ready to share or able to share. But the fact is, Clan Tremere has been fucked. And I greatly enjoy that. They've been neutered. I like the fact that they can't easily throw fireballs any longer. I like the fact that they can't call lightning down from the heavens any longer. But I also like the fact that they have access to these things if they're willing to put the work in. Moon Man. Moon Man! Stop it. I like the fact that there are now goals. Reclaim that power that the Tremere once had. Or have the other clans finally had enough and they're just going to squash them. They're not as needed in the Camarilla any longer. They're not exactly a central pillar. They're going to have to really start allowing those rituals that they have left to be used by other clans. Or used for other clans. If they're going to stay useful in the eyes of the Ivory Tower. And what about House Cortrix? The Sabbat loyal Tremere. The Anarchs. They now have Thaumaturgy. Are they just using Thaumaturgy to make themselves useful to the Anarchs? Or are they just going to wholesale teach the Anarchs Thaumaturgy? Are they going to start experimenting on Thin Bloods to figure out blood alchemy? There are a lot of options here. And I suggest as players and storytellers that you do your own thought process on that. And I'd like to hear all of it. If you do a video on what your thoughts of Clan Tremere, or your thoughts on Thaumaturgy, your thoughts on Blood Sorcery, and what they're going to do in the 5th edition. Are we going to be looking at a Thaumaturgy companion for 5th edition eventually? Which is going to give us back Laura Flames. It's going to give us back Path of Weather Control. I almost said Way, which are the Khaldun's. Are we going to see Khaldun? Are we going to have the Khaldun powers back? We'll find out. We've got time, right? The long night lasts forever. So I guess, from me, at our World of Darkness, and from Moon here, say hi, Moon. Yeah. Thank you for joining me on this clan discussion as we make our way through the bloodlines of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. Have a good evening.